The slap echoed through the living room like thunder on a clear night. My face burned, but the humiliation stung far worse than the physical pain. There, in front of my in-laws, siblings-in-law, and even the neighbors who had come for the family dinner, I received the cruelest blow a woman can endure: public demoralization at the hands of my own husband. "You're incompetent, Anna. You can't even make a decent dinner for my family," Ricardo roared, his eyes bloodshot with rage, his beer breath heavy in the air between us. "My mother was right when she said you were good for nothing." His mother, Margaret, smirked with malicious satisfaction from the other side of the table, as if this moment were the culmination of a long-awaited victory. The eyes of those present were fixed on me like daggers, some with pity, others with judgment, but all witnessing my humiliation. My 5-year-old daughter, Isabella, cried in the corner of the room, hidden behind an armchair, while my 2-year-old son, Peter, slept oblivious to the chaos that had descended upon our home. I remained standing, hand on my burning cheek, tasting the salty sting of tears that refused to be held back. I wasn't crying from pain, but from rage. Rage at myself for allowing things to reach this point. Rage at having become a shadow of the woman I once was. Rage at having believed that love could transform a man who never truly knew how to love. Margaret, his mother, started visiting our house every day. Initially, I thought it was to help with the baby, but I soon realized it was to supervise me. She criticized the way I breastfed, how I organized the house, how I cared for the child. "My son deserves a wife who knows how to properly take care of the family," she'd say, always with that fake smile that never reached her eyes. Ricardo never defended me. In fact, he started agreeing with his mother's criticisms. "She's right, Anna. You need to get more organized," he'd say, always in the tone of someone doing a favor by offering advice. "My mother raised 4 children alone. She knows what she's talking about." By the time Peter was born, 3 years later, I was completely isolated. I no longer had contact with my former coworkers, had lost touch with some friends, and my family lived in another state. My world was reduced to that house, those 4 walls, those constant criticisms. That's when the humiliations began to intensify. Ricardo started belittling me in front of others. "Anna doesn't understand any of this," he'd say, when the topic was politics, economics, or anything beyond the domestic sphere. "She stays home all day. She's out of touch with the real world." I tried to argue, to show that I still had valid opinions, that I could still think beyond diapers and bottles. But he always cut me off with that condescending smile. "Let the men talk about serious things, honey. Go take care of the kids." The physical violence also started subtly. A shove here, a pull there, always justified as an accident or a moment of nervousness. "Sorry, honey, I didn't mean to. You just make me nervous when you insist on arguing," he'd say, hugging me afterward, promising it would never happen again. But it did, and each time the excuse became weaker, the justification more absurd. I started walking on eggshells in my own home, measuring every word, every gesture, every breath, trying not to provoke his anger. Margaret knew everything, but pretended not to see. Worse than that, she fueled the situation. "My son is right to demand more from you," she'd say when she saw me crying in the kitchen. "You should be grateful to have a husband who supports you. Many women aren't so lucky." Roberto, Anna's father-in-law, was a quiet man, completely submissive to his wife's domineering personality. He sometimes looked at Anna with pity, but never dared to intervene. "Margaret runs the show at home," he confided in her once. "I've learned to keep my mouth shut." Fernanda, Ricardo's sister-in-law, was different. She had gone through a similar situation with her ex-husband and could see beyond the facade Anna maintained. "Anna, you can't go on like this," she told Anna one of the rare occasions they were alone. "You're losing yourself in this relationship. You need to fight back before it's too late." But Anna couldn't. She couldn't imagine a different life. She couldn't see a way out. She had become financially, emotionally, and psychologically dependent. She had 2 young children, no active profession, and nowhere to go. Or at least, that's what she thought. The breaking point was that night at the family dinner. Ricardo had drunk more than usual and was particularly aggressive. Anna had prepared a lasagna following exactly the recipe Margaret had given her. But when Margaret tasted it, she made a face of disgust. "It's tasteless," she declared, putting her fork down. "You can't even follow a simple recipe correctly." Anna tried to explain that she had followed everything to the letter, that she had seasoned it exactly as Margaret had taught her. But Ricardo exploded. "You can't do anything right. You always have an excuse for you're incompetent." That's when he hit her, in front of everyone, in front of her children. And it was at that moment that she remembered who she was before she became that submissive woman. She remembered the Anna who made important decisions, who led meetings, who was respected and admired. She remembered the strength she had inside her, dormant for years of manipulation and humiliation. That night, after everyone had left, after the children were asleep, she locked herself in the bedroom and cried. But she didn't cry out of self-pity. She cried out of anger. Anger at having allowed her life to reach this point. Anger at having surrendered her power to people who didn't deserve it. Then she remembered something she had stored in the back of her closet, a folder with all her diplomas, certificates, and letters of recommendation, documents that proved who she really was, beyond the mask of the submissive wife she had created. She opened the folder, and there they were, her bachelor's degree in business administration, her MBA in business management, the letters of recommendation from her former bosses, the awards she had received for exceptional performance. It was as if she were reconnecting with an old friend. That morning, for the first time in years, she got her laptop and started searching. Companies, jobs, opportunities. She discovered that her field had evolved significantly, that there were new methodologies, new software, new approaches. But she also discovered that her previous experience still held value. She spent the whole night studying, updating herself, remembering knowledge she thought she had lost. And for the first time in years, she felt a sensation she had forgotten, the sensation of power, of ability, of control over her own life. In the following days, she began to plan her exit. It wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't be fast, but it would be decisive. She had learned, during her years of marriage, to be patient, to be strategic. Now she would use those skills to her advantage. First, she started applying for jobs. She didn't say anything to Ricardo, obviously. She left with the excuse of taking the children to the park and, in fact, went to interviews. She lied about her availability, said she had a reliable babysitter, invented a support network that she didn't yet have. She got a position in a smaller company with a salary that was half of what she earned before, but it was a start, a new beginning. When she told Ricardo that she had found a job, he laughed. "You won't make it," he said scornfully. "You've lost your touch. You're out of date. You'll be fired in a week." But she wasn't. In fact, she quickly excelled. Her previous experience, combined with the maturity she had developed during her years of marriage, made her an even more competent professional. In 6 months, she had already received a promotion. The second part of her plan was to regain her financial independence. She opened a bank account in her name without Ricardo's knowledge. She started saving money, penny by penny. Every dollar she saved was a step towards freedom. She sought psychological help. She found a psychologist specializing in domestic violence who helped her understand the cycle of abuse she was in. She helped her develop strategies to protect her children, to document the abuse, to plan a safe exit. She reconnected with old friends. She discovered that many of them had gone through similar situations, that there was a support network she hadn't even imagined existent. Fernanda, her sister-in-law, became her closest ally. "I knew you had the strength for this," she told Anna when she confessed her plans. "I always knew the real Anna was just asleep, not dead." Throughout this process, which lasted almost 2 years, Ricardo noticed nothing. He was so used to seeing her as an extension of himself, as an object of his property, that he couldn't see that she had become an independent person again. He continued with the humiliations, the assaults, the control, but now she knew that all of that had an expiration date. Every insult, every slap, every attempt to diminish her only strengthened her determination. Margaret also didn't notice the change. She continued with her constant criticism, her malicious comments, her attempts to turn Anna against Ricardo. But now Anna saw her for what she really was, an insecure woman who tried to maintain control through manipulation and fear. That's when she discovered the secret that changed everything. I was organizing the house papers, looking for documents for income tax, when I found a folder that Ricardo kept locked in his office. Inside, I discovered something that shocked me: proof of another apartment, credit card bills with expenses that weren't ours, pictures of Ricardo with another woman. He had been cheating on me for 3 years, spending money that should have been for our family on his mistress, maintaining a double life while controlling me, humiliating me, making me believe I was incompetent. But what enraged me most wasn't the infidelity itself. It was the hypocrisy. He accused me of being incompetent, of not deserving the money he earned, of being a burden on the family. Meanwhile, he was spending thousands of dollars on gifts for another woman, maintaining a luxurious apartment for their meetings, living a single life at my expense. At that moment, I knew I had the power to destroy his life the same way he had destroyed mine. I had enough evidence to secure a favorable separation, generous alimony, custody of the children. I had the elements to expose his hypocrisy to the whole family, to all our friends. But I didn't want destruction. I wanted liberation. I copied all the documents, saved all the evidence, but I didn't say anything. It wasn't the right time yet. I needed to be even stronger, even more prepared. I needed to ensure that when I confronted Ricardo, I had all the cards in my hand. I continued working, continued saving, continued strengthening myself. I got an even bigger promotion, which gave me not only more money, but also more confidence. I started an online specialization course, updating my knowledge. I resumed professional contacts I had lost. 6 months later, I had a complete plan. I had found an apartment for myself and the children. I had secured a place in an excellent school for Isabella. I had built a solid support network. I had saved enough money to support myself independently for at least a year. But before executing my exit plan, I wanted Ricardo to know who I really was. I wanted him to understand that he had underestimated the wrong woman. The opportunity came at an in-law's birthday party. Ricardo was particularly arrogant that night, boasting about his professional successes, belittling me in front of the guests. "Anna doesn't understand any of this," he said when the subject was investments. "She doesn't even know the difference between a stock and a capitalization bond." That's when I stood up and, with the calmest voice I could muster, I started to speak. I talked about the financial market, about the latest changes in legislation, about investment strategies he didn't even dream of knowing. I spoke for 15 minutes, demonstrating a knowledge that impressed everyone present. The ensuing silence was deafening. Ricardo looked at me with a mixture of shock and anger. Margaret tried to hide her discomfort. The guests looked at me with a respect I hadn't seen in years. "Excuse me," I said, smiling. "Sometimes I forget that I shouldn't talk about serious things. After all, I'm just a housewife." The irony in my voice was palpable, and everyone understood. That night, Ricardo came home furious. "You humiliated me in front of my family," he shouted. "Who do you think you are to make me look like a fool like that?" "I am Anna," I replied, looking directly into his eyes. "I am the woman you met 10 years ago. The difference is that now I remembered who I am." He tried to intimidate me, tried to assault me, but I didn't back down. For the first time in years, I didn't feel fear. I felt power. "You can hit me, Ricardo," I said, with a calmness that surprised me. "But that won't change the fact that I'm no longer the submissive woman you created. That woman died the night you humiliated me in front of everyone." He looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It was fear. fear of losing control, fear of facing a woman who no longer intimidated. In the following days, he tried to regain control through other strategies. He tried to convince me that I was being irrational, that our family was in danger, that the children needed a stable home. He tried to use emotional blackmail, manipulation, promises of change. But I was no longer interested in listening. I had decided that my life and my children's lives were worth much more than maintaining the appearance of a destroyed marriage. That's when I decided to confront him with the proof of the infidelity. I placed all the documents on the kitchen table on a Saturday morning while the children were asleep. Now we're going to talk as equals, I said, showing him the photos, the bills, the receipts. You have two options: accept a civilized separation or face a lawsuit where all this will come to light. His expression changed completely. Arrogance gave way to despair. He tried to deny, tried to justify, tried to convince me that we could solve everything. There's nothing to solve, Ricardo, I said, with a firmness that surprised me. Our marriage ended the moment you raised your hand to me. Everything that happened afterwards was just me preparing to leave in the smartest way possible. He tried to blackmail me, threatened to take the children away from me, said that I wouldn't be able to support myself alone. But I was already prepared for all these arguments. I earn more than you think, I revealed. I have a bank account you don't know about. I have a rented apartment you've never seen. I have a new life that you're not a part of. The shock in his eyes was visible. He had completely underestimated my planning ability, my intelligence, my strength. You betrayed me, Ricardo, I continued. You humiliated me, abused me, diminished me. But worst of all, you underestimated me. You thought I was weak, dependent, that I couldn't live without you. You were wrong. At that moment, I saw the man I had loved completely unravel. I felt no pity, no anger. I felt only immense relief, as if a gigantic weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The separation was easier than I imagined. With all the evidence in my hand, Ricardo had no choice but to accept my terms. He kept the house, I got custody of the children, and a fair child support agreement. More importantly, I got my dignity back. If you've made it this far in this story, you've probably also gone through difficult situations in life. Maybe you identify with the Anna I was before, or maybe you're someone who needs inspiration to find your own strength. If so, I invite you to subscribe to our channel, where we share stories like this from real people who have found the strength to overcome life's most difficult challenges. Your transformation journey can also inspire others. Margaret tried to convince me to change my mind. "You're destroying my family," she said in one of our last conversations. "My son needs you. The children need a father." "Your children have a father," I replied. "They just don't have a mother willing to accept being mistreated to maintain the appearance of a happy family anymore." She looked at me with hatred, but also with a respect I had never seen before. It was as if she finally recognized that I was no longer the fragile woman she had known. The move to the new apartment was symbolic. Every piece of furniture I chose, every object I bought, every decision I made without having to ask anyone for permission was a declaration of independence. Isabella and Peter adapted quickly to the new routine. Children are more resilient than we imagine. "Mommy, you're happier now," Isabella told me one night as I tucked her into bed. "You smile more." She was right. I was smiling more. I was sleeping better. I was breathing easier. I was living, not just surviving. Fernanda became one of my best friends. "You inspired me," she told me. "Seeing your transformation gave me the courage to make changes in my own life." This made me realize that our stories don't just impact ourselves. When we find the courage to change, we inspire others around us to also find their own strength. 6 months after the separation, I received a promotion that made me manager of an entire department. My salary tripled. My self-esteem returned to levels I hadn't experienced in years. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Fernanda became one of my best friends. "You inspired me," she told me. "Seeing your transformation gave me the courage to make changes in my own life." This made me realize that our stories don't just impact ourselves. When we find the courage to change, we inspire others around us to also find their own strength. 6 months after the separation, I received a promotion that made me manager of an entire department. My salary tripled. My self-esteem returned to levels I hadn't experienced in years. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Ricardo tried to reconnect a few times. He said he had changed, that he had learned to appreciate me, that he wanted to rebuild our family. But I was no longer the same woman he had known. I had transformed into something much more powerful. A woman who knew her worth and wouldn't accept less than she deserved. You may have changed, Ricardo, I said in one of our last conversations, but I've changed too. And the woman I've become no longer needs you to be happy. He looked at me with a mixture of regret and admiration. I always knew you were special, he said. I just didn't know how to appreciate it. No, I replied. You always knew I was special. You just thought you could control me, diminish me, make me forget who I was. You were wrong. Today, 2 years after that terrible night, I look back and see a woman I thought I had lost forever. But she wasn't lost. She was just asleep, waiting for the right moment to awaken. I learned that strength isn't about never falling, but always getting back up. I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite fear. I learned that self-love isn't selfishness, but a necessity. My daughters now have a mother who is an example of strength, not submission. They will grow up knowing that a woman can be independent, can be powerful, can be respected. They will never accept being treated as I was treated because they know their worth. I became not just a survivor, but a thriving woman. Not just a victim who escaped, but a warrior who won. Not just a woman who was humiliated, but a woman who rose with dignity. And if you're reading this story and identifying with the Anna I was before, know that you also have that strength within you. Maybe it's asleep, maybe it's suffocated by years of manipulation and control, but it's there, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Your journey may be different from mine. Your challenges may be unique, but your strength, that strength we all have, is universal. It's powerful. It's transformative. Today, when I look in the mirror, I see a woman I admire. I see a woman who fought, who won, who transformed herself. I see a woman who took the shards of a shattered life and built something even more beautiful. This is my story. This is my victory. And this can be yours too.